31st, and we are here this evening for a special City Council workshop, and we will be discussing general operating millage proposal that we would like to discuss and see if we want to bring it forth to our voters. So I begin by calling this meeting to order, and I would ask that you do a roll call, please.
Mayor Milan.
I am here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Councilmember Shepard.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
That is a quorum,
Okay, so are we having public discussion starting off our meeting?
if you want to.
Let's do that, because we have people here, and I'm assuming they're here to discuss. So if anyone would like to participate in public discussion, come on up to the microphone, state your name and address, and what you'd like to talk about.
Hello, Michael Frank, 1333 North Selfridge, Clausen. I'm also a member of our school board. Been on the school board for, I think, 6 years now. And in the last 3 years, we've had two proposals on up in front of the voters. One for a Headley override and one for a new bond that both passed with 80% support. And I just wanted to share some of the procedures we went through that helped us get, the support of the city behind us on this, and so we have a real good shot as a city getting this millage through for what we need to do. The first one, the Headley override, for schools, the state requires us to collect 18 mills from non-homestead properties in the city or in the district for part of our school financing. And if we don't collect 18 mil, they don't make up the shortfall. So if we can't collect the full 18 mil, we have a shortfall in our planned budget. And a few years ago, we had hit a point where the Headley Amendment caused a rollback on the millage and the taxes, and we had lost almost a full mill, and it was tracking that within a year or two, it was going to be a significant shortfall in our budget and cause us problems. So we had our finance department, look at trends and project what the average Headley looked to be over the next 10 years. Because we are allowed to collect 18 mills and only 18 mills at the max. That gave us some flexibility because we could ask the voters to approve any millage amount, any number of mills that we wanted them to approve, but we could never collect more than 18. So we took that 10-year projected shortfall and added that to the 18 mills and came up with a number, and I think we were at like 22.5 mills to ask the voters to approve, so we could go 10 years without having to go back to the voters and say, hey, we need more money from you or another vote. Once we, as a school board, got that information from our our finance team, and decided we wanted that to be on the ballot, we reached out to the community looking for people who were interested in forming and running a citizens committee to support that. Because as members of the school board, we and the members, people in our school district, instead of working for the district, they weren't allowed to, using any school resources or while on school time, go out and campaign for the millage. All you're allowed to do is give information. We were able to explain what the Headley Amendment was, how the school financing works with the 18 mills, just very basic information. But we couldn't go into details about what we're going to be losing and why you need to go out and vote for this. That's what the Citizens Committee volunteered to do. They did some fundraising, got mailers together, got the absentee ballot list from the city clerk ahead of time, and they timed a mailing with all the information. At the same time, absentee ballots were scheduled to be mailed out. So people would get the information about the ballot proposal at the same time they're getting their ballot. So they don't get it and say, oh, no, it's a tax, I'm not going to vote for it. That would give them a chance to have the information in front of them to help them. And the Citizens Committee also had open houses, went to Hunter Community Center at one of their afternoon popcorn sessions. They went over to the towers at their ice cream social time, gave presentations to the people who aren't involved directly in the schools or have kids, to give them the information. Because historically, from doing some of the research we did, people who aren't directly involved in something tend to vote against taxes because they don't see a benefit for themselves. So that was a key thing. So when we came to the point where we needed to do this bond that just passed back in August, we assigned our finance team in the administration to look at the finances, look at any expiring bonds we had, look at realistically how much money we could raise without making it such a negative impact on people that they'd be against it. We had some expiring bonds, and we were able to work it out that no, it wasn't a tax cut, but we were able to, if the bond passed, it kept the current taxation at the same level. So we found a number that was going to work, that we felt we could sell to the community and move forward with. And then once we had that number, our superintendent formed a committee with parents, teachers, administrators, business owners in the city, parents, citizens who don't have any ties to the schools, wide variety, and I think there were about 45 or 50 people on this committee. And they broke them down into separate areas to look at the district, what our needs were, where we needed to invest the money, what we needed to do to fix some of our problems and get us set up to be stable moving forward for the foreseeable future. And that committee put together a proposal that they brought to us to approve before we approved actually putting anything on for vote for the election. But it clearly detailed we were raising this large amount of money we want to raise, but this chunk is to do this. This chunk is to do this. So we had all the money identified with a sub-project, where it was being spent, what it was going to do, and what the benefit was for the district and our students. And again, the same citizen committee that worked on the Headley override reformed, and they got a lot more people involved because the bond was a lot more money than a 18 mil override. They had call days where they would call people. They'd go door to door. They raised money, and they printed out little information cards to explain, how the taxation was going to work for people, how the money was being spent, at least a broad overview what the plans were, and then put themselves in front of the people to answer questions and move forward. Because we could just say, here's a bond, here's the information. We could tell them that, yes, this maintains the current millage level. It's aimed to raise $56 million. Here's the proposal on how the money will be spent. So we spent the time up front before we even made the resolution to add that to the ballot. So having that information up front and knowing that makes it a lot easier to talk to the citizens, explain to them why, get people on your team out there in the community without direct ties to city government, but ties to the city to talk to other citizens and say, we need to do this for our city. We need to improve this. We do need to improve that. And have the people there, and that it was, for us, we were lucky we had a small army of people who, we had about 100 people working to do this, and it really helped. And I said, both our ballot proposals passed at 80%. We did both of them intentionally in a non-November election, because anything with taxes generally do, if you do the research, tax increases do poorly at major elections. But if it's the only thing on the ballot, and you do a lot of good work to get the information out to the people who support it are the ones who are going to show up at the polling locations, vote for it, and get it to pass. And so it was very successful for us as a school district. We did a lot of work up front, and we got support from the community before we put it out to the community as a whole. We had people ready, willing, and able to support it and go out and sell it, because we couldn't, because of our position with, in government positions. The state law just doesn't allow us to do that. So it was really important to us to get that team, find the people in the community who were willing to do that, so you could turn this team loose and work to get this sold.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to share, the things we did. I hope it's helpful, gives you guys some information in your planning and moving forward. And,
I don't recall, how long was it for?
The bond?
22 not the bond.
We did 10 years for the Headley override. It worked out, on average, it was going to be somewhere between 0.35 and 0.5 mils a year rollback. So we did over 10 years, and we added enough above it. I think right now we're at about 22, even after the last, 3 Headley rollbacks. We still can collect our full 18, and we still have that wiggle room as more Headley rollbacks happen, because it's just going to keep happening, because the economy is still growing. Not fast, but it's growing. And with the economy growing, that Headley amendment kicks in and rolls back the taxes. So it's that planning up front to make sure you have your I's dotted and T's crossed before you go out and say, give us your money.
And you're still under that, there's nothing that's different between your Headley override requirements or what you can max at, right? So 5% rate of inflation, is that?
Yeah. I know they do the formula every year, because it's tied into the rate of inflation, because it's not the same every year, but it's relatively consistent. And I said, the city and the school districts are, thanks to Proposal A and Headley, we are under a lot of the same restrictions on our financing from the state and how they give the money, when they tell us how much we're going to get. I know you have to, the same way we do, have a budget ready before you know what you're getting from the state, because we're required to have a budget. We have to have ours a month before the state's required to have theirs, which is better. It used to be 3 months, and you guys are almost now 4 or 5 months, because and when the state had to do it by the end of September, you guys had 6 months of, okay, here's our best guess. So having this stuff and knowing how you want to spend the money, where it needs to go, what projects, what areas of the city it needs to be invested in going forward, not only will it help you get the millage passed, but it'll also help you plan on your budget year over year, because you have some solid information while you're waiting for the state to give you, the accurate amount that they're going to provide you. Because, unfortunately, while we're required by law to have our budgets done, they just ignore the one that they pass. So it's just the way it works.
Anyone else? Questions?
Thanks, appreciate your time.
If you guys have any questions, you can contact me. My email address through the school district is right on the school's Board of Education webpage. I check it daily. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Appreciate it.
I got it on speed dial.
Of course you do.
Andrew Hodges, I can't reiterate enough what Michael just said about having all your ducks in the row and knowing what you need. So since I'm not really what I would like to know is if you're going out for this tax and is it for 10 years, as a resident, I would like to know what you're going for. I'd like to know what your plans are for Hunter Community Center, or even the capital improvement plan that the Planning Commission's working on, or even how about addressing our crumbling infrastructure. I mean, Clausen's water and sewer lines, they're a mess, and what's your plan to redo them? And also, what about the state mandate about replacing the lead water lines? I mean, we need to talk about that. You need a plan, you need a budget for it. And so far, I mean, you guys are coming here and you're going to vote on this tomorrow. And it really seems like that you guys haven't done any analysis or planning in this matter. Just like what Michael said, it took months for the school district to get theirs to go through. We needed to know what we needed, what, curriculum, where do we have to put money towards there, and so forth. This is what you guys need to do. You need to decide and what the city needs. Do you want to put money towards infrastructure? Or, I mean, just even the departments heads, their capital improvements. I'm sure they're coming back with stuff. I mean, have you budgeted for it? Have you thought about it? You're going to go for how long? Are we going for a 10-year? How much are you going? All the way up to the 15 mils? I would hope that you would consider maybe only going for a 1 to 2 year for right now, because you guys do not know what you need, and you can't speak after you vote on it. So what are you gonna tell the public? What are you gonna tell the residents? You guys need to do your due diligence and find out what the city really needs. Do you remember how much it costs to put in infrastructure a year to keep it where it's at? It was several $1 million. Have you budgeted for it? So I really think it's important for you guys to take your time and look what the city needs, instead of just putting it on the ballot and just assuming that the residents will vote for this new tax. We would like to know what our needs are. So please, if you guys consider, please don't go for a 10 or a 20, because you're just guessing. You haven't even addressed your needs. Please think about a 1 or 2, and not to go for the full 15 mils. Thank you.
So just for the record, this would not be a new tax. It would be,
If it's only expired, you have to call it a new.
yes, I understand that, but that's sending the message that we're asking for something that people aren't already used to.
By law, we have to use the word new.
Yes, I understand that, but we also want to present the appropriate message to people that this has already been factored into their budgets, right? Because we've been collecting it for the past 10 years. So I'm going to continue. If anyone else would like to speak, public comments, and then we'll get on to the
Anybody on the
business of
screen?
this. Pardon me?
Anybody dialed in?
I can't tell. I can't see from there. But I do have one. Okay.
That's just well.
So I received a letter today from our former city manager, Mark Pollack, who asked me to read it as he's not able to be here today. So, as the finance director for the city of Clausen for 18 years, I feel like I can provide some insight to the challenge that this Headley override millage proposal presents to both council and the tax-paying residents of this proud city. When this millage was placed before the voters over 10 years ago, Clausen was faced with the prospect of cutting services and personnel because our revenues were no longer able to cover our costs. It seems like a pretty simple proposition. Either make cost cuts or make the difficult decision to allow the residents and voters the opportunity to restore some of the millage that had been reduced by Proposal A and the Headley millage reduction. Back in 2009, after the housing and financial collapse, the city had spent nearly all of its fund balance reserve and faced the very real decision of either cutting personnel and services or allowing the voters to retain the services that they had grown very accustomed to. Your current finance director, Kelly Rao, is an excellent and experienced municipal financial professional. She was browbeaten and chastised by the former mayor and continues to be accused of not presenting a proper budget by Councilmember Sampson. I have seen the budget that she has prepared, and there is nothing insufficient or improper about it. It lays out the plan for the future as it is supposed to do. Kelly Rao has prepared a proper budget and worked with the department heads to present a plan for the next fiscal year. Council has a responsibility to review and analyze what the finance director presents and ask the questions that residents and taxpayers may have. You are going to continue to hear from the people who want to make decisions for you. And this is a new millage and that you are owed information to decide whether or not this should be on the ballot. As someone who prepared 18 budgets for the city and saw many millages pass with factual information entrusted to the voting residents, council's job is to entrust their finance professional with the facts. When your finance professional recommends that you reinstate an expired Headley override millage to pay the bills and to continue to provide the services that the residents here have grown to depend upon, then your job as a member of council is to put the millage on the ballot and let the voters decide if they want the services they currently have to continue. Put this millage on the May ballot and let the taxpayers decide if they want these services or if they want cuts. Thanks, Mark Pollock. So with that, I'm going to just give, this is not a new item. We're talking about it tonight again, but this item came up in July with the last council under a different leadership all around. We had a different city manager, we had a different mayor, we had different members on council. The city manager was requested to put together a presentation to explain what was coming up regarding our millage proposal. So at that time, he gave a presentation, which was, I think, an August 6th meeting, and it looks like this. This information is available to anyone who wants to see it, but I'm just going to give the highlights so that we can then begin our talking points. In 2012, voters approved an additional general operating millage proposal in the amount of 4.2398 mils for a period of 10 years. This was done at that time to restore city charter millage authorization back up to 15 mils. The millage has been used to provide funds for general operating purposes consisting of police, fire, public works, operations, and continuation of existing services. It has been reduced to the current rate of 3.6892 due to rollbacks. We are incorporated under the Home Rule City Act 1909, PA 279, which dictates the rules in which we operate, stating that our charter millage rate is 15 mils. The refuse, library, DDA, bond debt, and other debt millages do not count against the charter limits. Over the past 10 years, the city has continued to operate with a reduced full-time staff while continuing to provide the same service. Since 2000, we have gone from 62 to 48 full-time employees. Employees have seen increases to healthcare costs. We have also done away with pensions to new hires to decrease legacy costs. So what could happen without the levy? Since the city has only one combined general operating millage fund, every department could see cuts or elimination of services. Police and fire department cuts would mean less police officers and firefighters to patrol or help on each shift and therefore reduce public safety. DPW personnel perform numerous day-to-day activities that the people of Clawson have come to count on and expect. Snow plowing, leaf pickup, tree trimming, street cleaning, etc. could be on the chopping block. So that's the general overview of what has been presented in the past. I'd also like to point out that this was brought up last July and nothing came of it, knowing that it was an important issue that needed to be discussed. So here we are tonight with an issue that must be addressed by the 9th of August. We have a deadline.
Yeah.
So this must be addressed by the 9th. It's something that is actually not something that the council needs to decide, although it would be wonderful to understand all of the way that these monies would be spent. I believe it's pretty safe to say, given the conversations I've had with current and former finance and city managers in this community, not going out to recapture these funds, is the term I'll use, will be a big detriment to all of us, because what we like about this community overall, I'm going to say, is probably the services that we all are able to capture while we live here. And of course, they don't come at zero cost. We have to have a cost associated. So tonight, for purposes of this meeting, I'll allow each of you time to speak. You can share whatever is important to you. But what I'm going to ask is that this is not a decision for the city council to make about whether or not it is approved, or whether or not we accept a millage, whether we approve the funding for the city it is for the residents to decide. And I'm asking that tonight, we can come to a consensus and determine how to proceed so that we can get this on a ballot and let the citizens determine how we want to move forward with this. There's plenty of time for the budgeting aspect to come in. Mr. Frank and his examples of how his committees work together, I think we can get education together after the fact. If we were going out and asking for something that was hugely in excess of what we've had in the past, I would feel like it would be extremely wise, prudent for us to sit here and say, this is how we're going to allocate these funds. We're not really in that exact picture. I think anyone who's worked for this city or has people who work for this city know for a fact that, they're not overly, that they all work extremely hard. There's not a lot of lean in the budgets, that the departments work diligently for what they do. And I think I, as a resident, I don't know what I'd tell you I'd want to give up if we're not going to recapture these funds, because I like having my streets plowed. I like having the leaves taken care of. I like all of the various services that these people provide for us. I like knowing that if something were to happen at my home, I'd get a quick response on a fire and a quick response on police. So that's my quick little version. So I think I will go to Councilman Shepherd. I'll let you speak.
Sure, I appreciate that, Madam Mayor. One thing is that I think the proposal or the information provided dated July 14th, 2021. And certainly, the information there, I don't have any reason to question it at that point in time. But now we're, 8 months after the fact. A lot has changed since then. One of them is rate of inflation is now at, I believe, 7%. So that's significant. We haven't seen that type of change in the rate of inflation since, I believe I heard, 1982. So that has a major impact, in my opinion, but I don't know. I don't know how that impacts what was presented back in July. How did that present itself now? Based on just that alone, I have question on just to move forward with what was presented in July and say, okay, here we go. I have some questions about that, and I'd like to see how that's answered. The other thing is, just going through the 37 pages worth of the revenue and expenditure report for the city of Clawson. Net of revenue and expenditures, balance as of June 30th, 2020 was $942,473. Balance as of a year after that is $3.8 million. And that's significant. I'd like to know, there's a lot of numbers in here, how we got to that point. There was another set of numbers that we received that I was trying to go through that showed that what was budgeted and what was actual was about a 20% increase over what was budgeted. I don't know how that is, how you score those numbers. What does that mean? I'm not sure. All right, and what does that indicate on what our needs are? The other thing that's not indicated in here is the ARPA funds. We're supposed to get some money that's supposed to apply to something that would probably be used from our budget. But again, we need to understand what those monies are, how we can spend them, how does that impact what we plan on doing for this Headley override. So there's a lot. There's a lot of questions that I still have on this that I would love to see, just those couple of questions answered, so we understand. And the other thing too is that, given the rate of inflation and a potential prospect of an everything bubble burst, what would that mean in the long term if we were to go ahead with a 10-year millage? Would we be hamstringing ourselves to something that we would not be able to rectify and be stuck with whatever those results are, as opposed to a short-term millage, a millage renewal or Headley override?
So our finance director's here. Kelly, do you have any direct questions for Kelly, or do you just have questions
Well,
that you
I said a couple.
addressed at some point? Well, no, but that's not fair. You ran them off, and
Sure,
let's give her opportunity to really address them.
I mean, that's kind of, if you heard what I said, I can go back and try to recapture it, right? So, but.
Yes, if you could start from the top, I can
So,
try to answer your
perfect.
questions.
Okay, so
Thank you, Kelly.
7% rate of inflation is what we're facing right now, right?
So
that's what I heard for the
So
month
the
of
state of
January.
Michigan, I thought I had the calculated inflation rates from the state of Michigan, but it isn't typically the 7%. I think it was 1.04% on the last rollback. So that's all calculated by the state of Michigan.
Sure, but that's general. We had about a 20-year period where inflation was kept in check under 3%, right? And even less than that.
I can't answer what the rate of inflation will be when the state sets its rates for the rollback, so.
Okay.
But I can tell you that it was 1.04% this last time.
We're in new territory, or at least 40-year-old territory now, on how that impacted communities when it came to what we're asking for our citizens to pay, right? Because as inflation goes up, their wages are probably going to remain stagnant and their buying power is going to be reduced. And so we're asking for remaining what we had before, but with their inability or their ability to be lessened in order to cover those expenses. So again, I'd like to know.
I can't respond to what the residents are making or how it's going to impact them. I can only respond to how our budget is impacted.
Okay, but we can acknowledge that as
Sure,
everything
sure.
increases, that's something that we need to address if we're going to ask for something that somebody's going to say, okay, well, what's that mean to me, right? So we need to understand, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I
7%.
think that's where the residents would say at the ballot box, can I afford this? And that's when they would say yes or no.
Yeah. Okay. Amended budget and activity for 2021, what do we show?
General fund?
Yeah, it's the last page, right? So we're on page 21. Ending fund balance, all funds, I can't even read it. 19 million amended budget and activity.
That's all fund, that would be all funds. I don't have that report in front of me. I'm
Okay.
looking specifically at general fund.
Okay. Well,
But yeah, the all funds was about 18, 19 million.
okay, and then the actual activity is 22.8. So that's about a 20% difference between what the amended budget is and the actual activity. What does
The
that
actual
mean?
act was, if there was an amended budget that should have, I believe, without seeing the actual report in front of me, I probably shouldn't respond, but there was probably some line items that went over budget that was not amended, even though we had the revenue.
Okay, but that's the kind of thing that if we're going to be asking, where are we with what we have? Where is ARPA in all of that, right? How does that add to the equation?
ARPA is in a different fund altogether. It was budgeted and approved by council a couple months back, I believe, a budget amendment of $600,000. We get another tranche in another probably 6-7 months. So that is in a different fund altogether, because at the time that we were awarded it, it was supposed to be separated. There are recent events within the past 2 weeks that we could possibly use it for general operating expenditures.
Okay, but we can apply it to general operating, can we not?
Yes, if council wants to do that.
So again, that's something that would potentially have an impact on what we may be asking, at least in the short term.
Yes.
Okay. But we don't know how much that is.
That would be within the budget if you wanted to amend the budget and apply it to general fund expenditures, we could do that. We have 4 years to decide.
On the expense for how we
For
spend the
ARPA.
ARPA. So then it becomes, okay, we're going to do it in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but
Correct.
it has to be applied at some point in time, right? We have to commit it to something and then spend it within that time frame, right?
Correct.
And many communities are holding off on their allocation.
Well, we actually have an exemption. So we still have to report it, but any community, any use or non-entitlement units, which would be us, that has received less than $10 million has an exemption basically to do whatever they want with the funds now.
And from what I've been talking to other people who are in these positions, many communities are holding off on allocating those funds right now because they're trying to see what other federal funds are coming, right? We have clearly road issues, we have sewer issues, we have a lot of infrastructure issues. And I guess we're probably all hopeful that perhaps we'll see some dollars for those coming down the road, but of course, no guarantee. So holding on to our ARPA funds and not allocating them to, it's like if you get a bonus every year, you don't want to spend it on your Visa bill and your water bill. If you can help it, you want to do something that you couldn't normally do. So,
And it could possibly be used for match for larger dollar amounts or combine with other communities. They're still working out the details.
it's kind of exciting. There's potential opportunities out there. It would just be
Correct.
nice to know. It'd be nice to get a bigger piece of that little pie, too. If anyone's listening, we need more pie. Do you have any other questions?
And I guess it kind of was the same thing, that there was a difference between, I can't even find the budget report.
Which one?
I think it was the one with the 4 years delta,
I have all of them.
the one with the 37 pages.
37
Yeah.
pages?
So again, that goes back to just,
Yeah, here, you can
Sure.
have mine. Right there.
So which column are you looking at?
last
So
column, balance year over year, right? So
This
June
is
30
page 33?
Page 37.
Page? Oh, I
Right,
don't
this
have,
is, again, it's
I don't have
everything.
37, this is a 33-page
Oh,
report.
sorry. Did it say? I thought
Here,
it said
you can be one of
37 on
mine.
the end.
Got 37.
I probably stopped printing the last 4 pages.
My printer ran out of paper, so, but I still got a 37 on.
Well, you didn't run out at 37. then.
No,
You
no, I ran out of
after.
other documents I couldn't print out, so whatever.
Okay, so for FY '21, you're talking, we had total revenue in all funds of 35 million plus, and total expenditures of 31 million plus. So that's a difference of 3.8 million that we had revenues over expenditures. If we have any additional adjustments, which we shouldn't have many more, that is, that would go into the fund balances of the various funds. So for general fund, however, which this millage would apply to,
Which page is that, if you find it? I thought it was all-
this would be page 12. We had total revenues last year of 8.6 million and total expenditures of 7.5 million. So we had a $1 million excess over revenues over expenditures.
Okay,
So that
so-
would fall into fund balance.
Okay, so year over year, 2020 to 2021, what was the change?
2020, it was 420,000, so it was about $600,000 from prior year.
Okay.
Keep it just in case.
Yeah. Well, I like to see, well, if you need to refer to it, go ahead. Okay, so anyways, that's fine. Again, I just trying to figure out, okay, where are we with what?
I believe last year, because of COVID, there wasn't as many expenditures due to staffing and various things. Revenue was reduced a little bit too, but
Yeah.
not as much as originally expected.
Which is counterintuitive for the reason why we got ARPA.
Correct.
Well, anyway. Okay, I just trying to understand where we are with what we've spent, where we are with what we need, what are the potential major impacts. And again, the 7%, that scares the bejesus out of me, because we haven't seen it since '82. And I don't know if we have anything to go back to for reference on what was going on. I mean, obviously, the economy is completely different with what the inputs were and what was affecting it. I don't know what housing rates were at that point in time. I know interest rates on homes were, 17%, I think, or something crazy like that. So, I mean, that's also going to have
I
some
mean, we
impact
can
at
go
some
back
point.
to the state forecast and revenue reports and see where that was at the time and what the inflation rates were that affected any of the Headley rollbacks.
Okay. Well,
All that-
that was it was 78 when Headley, was it about that time frame? Okay, so there may be some evidence on what took place with the inflation rate that high. Okay. I don't know, that's just a concern.
Is that it?
For now,
Okay, that's fine, fair. Who'd like to go next? Councilmember Sampson?
The only thing I can say is, about a week ago, I sent email to the chief asking for a bunch of documents to be updated and sent to me. And then we've been going back and forth. He sent a bunch of documents, but they're the same ones that we had 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Then this morning, we talked in email today, and I still didn't get anything new. So I don't really have a question until I have the answers to what I need. We need an update on these figures. They're 8 months old.
I did provide
things.
additional information. We had
Did you update the documents?
first two items that you asked for were current items that the chief sent on Friday, I believe. And
Did you
then
answer
I
the-
provided additional information on
Did you
number
send the
3 and
documents that I
number
asked for?
number 3 and number 4. I provided
Okay,
information.
there's like 4 or 5 of them there. So I'm done.
Okay, well, in all fairness, the email was sent on Thursday. and She's not here on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Should she be
No, the-
required to present that
The
information?
email was sent when the chief asked me to, when we were talking about this. That was immediately I sent it, so.
Okay,
it
but I'm just saying,
wasn't me
you
holding
have
anything
to
up.
allow people an opportunity to
The chief should have
present
brought it up a little
information.
earlier, if you needed it earlier. I immediately sent it, and I didn't, I got a bunch of documents, but they weren't updated. As soon as I get them updated, I'll have questions. But right now, I got 8-month-old figures.
The information has not changed from the July presentation.
Don't say that, because we've had 4 or 5 amendments to the budget. We've had all
No,
kinds.
as far as speaking with the millage itself,
Yeah.
that has not changed.
I want to know what the budget is.
The financial statements were.
Just like Glenn talked, I want to know if we're going to, we keep telling the people we're going to fix the roads. Show me the list. We don't even have a list.
Well, there is
How
a
about the
list.
sewers? She mentioned the sewers or the lead pipes. We don't have these things somewhere to say, that money's right here, in this column. That's where the money is. Then I'll go, okay. But if I can't get it, I can't tell the people, hey, we really need you to vote for this. We may fix your road someday, but we've been telling you that for 10 years. Hey, we've been telling the state we're going to fix the pipes, and we're hoping we're going to hold out long enough until they pay for it, I think. And in all this, we need some exact documents, and then I'll have questions. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Anderson?
Yeah, just to start, I'm going to refer to this document, the report for the budget, for the operating budget.
Okay.
Make sure we're on the same page. Is this, okay.
What you mean?
I'm a new guy, so please bear
Okay,
with me.
no problem. Oh, that's the one that I had sent you last week, I
Yeah,
think?
kind of a summary table right in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to get a sense of the history. Basically, in fiscal year 19, we had expenditures of 7.86.
Correct.
And revenues of 786, expenditures of 7.47, leaving us with a surplus of $390,000.
Correct.
Okay. Fiscal year 20, very similar numbers. Revenues of 7.81, expenditures 7.38, with a surplus again of 420. So 2 very similar years. Then the next one was a fiscal year 21 projection. Now, when is our fiscal year begin and end here?
It begins July 1st and ends June 30th
So July of,
of whatever year.
so for example, 21, when it begins July of,
FY '21 begins July of 2020.
okay, so 6 months early. Earlier than the stated, never mind.
Gotcha.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
The
So fiscal year 21.
fiscal year ends for a particular year in June of that year.
Sure,
So
okay.
fiscal year 21 ends in June of 21. Fiscal year 22 ends in June of 22.
Okay. So in this case, fiscal year 21 ended last June.
Correct.
So this, at this time, was a projection. The projection looks a little different than the previous years. It's at revenues of 8.31, which is significantly higher, and then expenditures significantly lower at 6.88, leaving a surplus of 1.43 million. Is that how it played out by the time we were done?
No, according to this report here on
Okay.
page 12 of 37, the final revenues were 8.6 and final expenditures 7.5. And that's 1.08 that would fall into fund balance.
Okay.
I believe the majority of those, that increased revenues have to do with the building, the Ace Hardware building for permits and things like that. There was some grant items received for PPP and such for the COVID grants.
Okay.
So,
So that's fairly in line with the previous 2 years.
correct.
Okay. Now, moving on to the fiscal year '22 budget, they're looking for revenues of 9.42, and of course, expenditures of 9.42, with a surplus of 0 at this point.
That was actually adjusted in that 9.42. What we had included the ARPA funds of 1.2 because when the budget was submitted to council, there was no clear definition from the state when or how much we would receive. And so a couple months back, I believe October, I submitted a budget amendment to council, which you approved, adjusting that figure. I took it out of general fund as recommended by the state and GFOA, and I put it in Fund 275, I believe.
Okay. So the 9.42 was changed to
8.2.
8.2. So it was basically $1 million was moved. Okay. So that's fine. So with that, 8.2, and of course, then the expenditure was presumably dropped at the same
Correct.
time.
Correct.
Okay. So again, just getting up to speed here, I want to make, again, budget numbers shouldn't change greatly from year to year.
Not typically.
And I agree that the American Rescue Plan probably shouldn't be used for operating since we don't know how long that's going to last. So, anyway. So, okay, so now that I'm up to speed on the numbers, as far as the millage goes, that 3.6, that is, of course, an additional to the 9.36 we've had for years.
Correct. That will, well, we currently, in this past, on the past tax statement, that 3.6 was assessed. If council does not send it to the residents to vote and the
Sure.
residents don't vote
expired.
it,
Yeah.
that's gone.
Yes.
If they vote to put it back on the tax assessment, then if it's the same amount, it'll be generally the same millage rate of revenue.
Okay. So in '21, we had a surplus of 1.1 million, which is significantly better than the previous 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. At this point, though, we're looking still at 8.2 versus 8.2 and 0. Although, again, expenditures going from 7.5 to 8.2 is 700,000. Again, please bear with me. Can you give me the shorthand as far as why we're 8.2 this year versus 7.5?
A lot of it has to do with the new buildings. I think there's one on Rochester Road, the Ace Hardware building, so that would be the permits. They're still building that, so that permit revenue is still coming in.
No, thank you. I understand that's the revenue enhancer. My question is, in terms of the budget, last year we were at 7.5 in expenditures. And if we hold to that this year,
Well, the expenditures would increase for inspection fees. So,
But-
it should align, revenues and expenditures every year should be budgeted pretty
sure,
much
for
the
a
same.
balanced budget.
Yes.
Absolutely. I guess my point is that last year expenditures were 7.5. This year they're projected to be 8.2.
The actual expenditures were 7.5. I believe the budget was a little bit higher, but last year, due to COVID and cutting staff, not filling park positions, that's why the actual expenditures were lower. The budgeted expenditures, I'm assuming, I don't have it in front of me, were probably higher.
Okay, so for fiscal year '22, you're expecting them to go to 8.2 million.
Yes. Budgeted expenditures for '21 were 8.2.
Okay. So, I guess, just making some observations, I agree with Glenda, Councilman Shepherd. We are in a very volatile phase right now. This is the kind of inflation we saw when we were teenagers and kids, right? People talk about the American Rescue Program, but basically Washington's printed dollars and is spreading them across the country. And what Washington prints in dollars, inflation takes away. So with that, I agree we've got a big variable. I agree with Councilman Shepherd in that respect. But there's nothing we can do to reduce that at this point. It's a variable we just kind of have to plow our way through. As far as inflation goes, there are countervailing variables in play. On one hand, costs are going to go up. On the other hand, assessed values on property will go up. So how these counterbalance each other, it's kind of hard to tell. But at this point, I don't know that we can project that exactly unless, Kelly, you've got some kind of projections there?
I don't have that projection, no. But even though the residents' costs may go up, City of Clawson's costs are going to go up as well.
Yeah.
So that would be even more harmful to the city if we don't collect additional dollars.
Right, so if the assessment increases go up in line with our expenses, I hate to say this, it's kind of a wash. But it's difficult to say it's a wash when you've got variables moving faster than they used to, right?
Well, it goes back to what I said, the actual spending dollars of our citizens are going down, right? Because their
Yeah.
cost of living is going to be going down just as fast as prices are going up. So we're going to be asking more of them with what they have now. In future dollars, they're going to be much less, right? And that's just the nature of it.
Yeah,
So,
that's the nature of inflation, right?
yeah. I did have, Madam Mayor, if I may. So just going into the part of the packet that Councilman Anderson was talking about, the debt billing for water and sewer rates. When did that start and when will that end?
I don't have that information. Actually, may have when it started. Give me one moment. I guess I do not have that information. I don't have that information with
Okay.
me.
All right, so it could very well end in the next
Drain and sewer.
Yeah.
Expires 2029.
2029?
Correct.
Where? Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, there it is. All right, yeah, there.
Now, the drain and sewer debt is charged against water rates, so that
Yeah.
that is revenue debt.
Yeah, that's
So-
exactly, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
there's nothing in the millage that we're asking for that would be part of this. is that
Correct,
right?
correct.
Okay.
So, I guess my question, we're basically talking about the operating budget, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That is
And
correct.
so, right now, the operating budget is running at 9.3 mils. I'm sorry, 9.3 plus 3.6, approximately 13 mils currently. 13
Yes,
mils is
yes,
funding.
yes. Mm-hmm.
If we do not renew the 3.6, we will be dropping approximately 27% from our operating budget. I don't know any organization that you can cut 27% out of and not feel some pain.
Yes, that is correct.
So, I agree, there's a lot of variables we got to think about. There's two ways to look at it. 3.6 is either too much, not enough, or it's just right. Hopefully, it's just right. If it's too much, we have a surplus we can build up to help address infrastructure issues.
But if we were not to renew this and we went after our surplus, how long before it would run out? Maintaining current services, employee, staff levels with the dollars that are spent today.
Within 3 years.
And that's not a place we want to be. For all the reasons that were
Two and
mentioned
a half
earlier.
years.
Right,
That's-
yeah. So I'm going to try and simplify this as best I can from my standpoint, and I'm not a number person, right? So I'm going to say, we have an obligation here as city council to take this to the residents and let the residents determine how important our current level of city services are. Our question would be, do we maintain the 3.6? Do we increase it to our cap? Or do we decrease it, which probably is not wise because we're giving something up? So Kelly, I'd like you, I'm so sorry, you just sat down.
It's okay.
You're our financial professional. You've provided us a lot of information. You've given this presentation. We've seen this presentation in different formats over different people. We've never heard this before from you. Indulge us. What is your professional opinion on what this city needs to do to maintain? What would you suggest?
I mean, to maintain, excuse me, you would have to at least keep what we have right now, the 3.6. However, you have to take into account any additional rollbacks. Right now it's about $1.5 million in revenues for that particular millage. If you go up to 4, you may get that 1.5 million for the next few years.
What do we do?
Right around.
What do we do with the
If you go
valuation?
up to 5.6, pardon me,
What do you do with the increase in the valuation of houses? The whole city, the SCV?
that would be taken into account as well.
How much do you project that's going to go up?
I don't have that in front of me. I think there was a projection done back in July that Mike Smith had discussed.
With something like this.
I would agree to keeping all the services like they are, making it 3.6 for 2 years. Something short. That we're going to have a new city manager. Give him 2 years. You don't want to give him 1 year. You got to give him 2 years to figure out where he's at and what he needs to do. But keep everything status quo for 2 years.
2 years to me is nothing. Like, you're going to plan 2 years and you'll accomplish nothing. You'll have another group of people sitting here doing this. This is a difficult thing to do. Go out to the residents once, make it worth their while to make a decision. You're a homeowner. What are you willing to give up? I mean, it comes down to what are you willing to give up, or what do you want to gain? If there's a potential gain, are there any ramifications? There are no ramifications for us going out to the maximum amount, correct?
Other than the voters saying no, that would be
Right,
your
exactly.
ramification.
And then-
As far as infrastructure or other needs, there's other options. You can take out debt service based on where our finances are at the time. I think we have right now up to 32 million available, although we may not want to take that because we can't afford to pay it back. But there are other options to complete infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, so.
You've mentioned revenue bonds that the,
Revenue bonds, general obligation, debt, sewer. We would have to get with the financial advisor and our bond attorneys to see what our best option would be. And I believe I sent earlier today an attachment from PFM that kind of spells out what we could do with our debt service.
I don't know, I think it's very fluid right now to set ourselves, peg ourselves on a number for 10 years and find that that was too long because too many variables impacted not just our budget, the way we operate, but also our citizens. I think we need to take a better look at this. Given the time frame, we should probably do something shorter. So I agree with Mr. Sampson as far as the length of time. I'd rather do it longer, but right now, we are not where we were 10 years ago with our economy.
I would recommend it at a minimum 5 years, if not 10. It took us at least a year and a half to discuss this issue, and it still hasn't been resolved. So, you know what I mean?
That process can change. Right.
How is it going to change?
Well, we just speed up the process and actually follow it. So,
Well, okay, but you've been sitting here since August, and this came up in August, and here we are again, right? The person who was driving this originally,
I tried to bring it up on our third.
we tried bringing it up for a December
If you
10th.
remember that, nobody, wanted to listen, they wanted to yell. We've been trying to bring it up. So
the
let's,
great time to have done it would have been not November 3rd, because we won't even talk about November 3rd. We're talking about January, whatever. I'll skip that one. Yeah, we'll not talk about that, but July 15th when it came up, August 6th or 8th or 10th or whatever, when it was supposed to come back, and people decided it would behoove them to get rid of the person who was given the instructions to try and get this taken care of. I mean, we can rehash the past
Yeah.
6 months or year or 5. It won't help our residents. Our job today is to determine how to get this out of our hands and put it in the hands of our residents. They're wise. They're the ones that know their purse strings. They're the ones that are going to ultimately burden the responsibility, and they're capable of making a wise decision based on the information that is here today, not based on projected information for the future, although it might be nice to have. It's really not applicable for all of this.
I would still like these documents updated, because you and Mr. Anderson here made a bunch of changes on the document we got. So let's update them and give them back to us,
We're getting-
all them questions that you had,
Sure,
so I
well-
can ask questions.
We're going to be doing budgeting. That's a part of the budgeting process, and I'm sure all of that will be taken care of in
It's
time
also
for the
part of, it's
budgeting.
also part of our decision-making. How much do we need to ask for? Right now, we're kind of like either nothing or 15, it's kind of, there's a whole bunch of area between these two that we need to know. How much do we really need to run the city?
How much do we really need to, what's your goal? What do you want to do with that money? Do you have a,
That's exactly what we don't know.
okay, well, we don't have time to figure that out. Let's just be honest. We're crunched by time on this, and
That's-
it's not anybody's fault that we're crunched on time for this. It's the fact of, that's how things are done here.
I'd like to see it.
We'd like to not have it done that way, which means we're not going to let the clock tick out on this one. We can't afford to. The residents deserve for us to make a decision today, put it out there for them, give them whatever information can come up between the time we say this is what's going to be proposed for the ballot, this is what they're going to vote on. That's where the education comes in. That's where you want to send out letters, emails, groups, think tanks, whatever you want to do. That's where all of that comes into play.
I believe you said we can't be involved once we vote.
No, I'm not saying you
We
can't
can't?
do it as, no, there's strict laws about what you can and can't do from where you're sitting, right? Like, it's technically the employees who can't do it on work time.
Yeah, council as well, when you're representing the city as a council person or mayor. Well, while you're up there, no.
No,
Your
right, of
personal
course.
time- your
Yes, of
personal time,
course.
Yes.
Yes.
When you're away, you can.
Yes.
But it can't be.
You're not advertising. We
construed
can't
as being
advertise
done
it from
as
here,
an
right?
official
Of course.
city.
It's not a mandate, right? We're not mandating, we're not supporting, we're not, and we're not doing any of those things. But we do owe it to our residents to make a decision that's on their best interest at this particular time. This has no personalities involved in it. It doesn't have anything except, do you want to maintain what we have today? We don't have enough we don't have enough millage operating dollars here to capture, to be able to adequately address the road situation or the sewer situation. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you are
Right?
correct.
So let's be honest about what we need this for. We want these dollars so that we can alleviate the problems that existed in 2011 or 12 when they came out for this, or 10, whatever it was, when they came out for this millage in the first place, to allow our residents and our employees to maintain the status that they are currently at, so that we can provide the level of services that we currently provide. If we don't do our due diligence here and get that on a ballot, we failed our citizens.
I made a statement on what I would accept, but the sewers and the streets, we can do a bond for them, can't we? And we know that money's going just for that.
Yes, that
It can't
would-
be used any other way.
That is a
That's what I'd like to
possibility,
see.
yes.
Right, well, we're going to have to do that. That's a different process from this.
Well, that's why we don't ask everybody to let's go to 15 mils and then come back and say, and we need a couple more for this.
Okay, but nobody said
and we need
15
that.
mils here today, and
Well, I
and
agree.
honestly, in all fairness, if we, well, it's an option, right? So
It's an option.
So let's talk about that. Let's say, let's pretend everyone's on the same page and is agreeing that this needs to be done, and we need to establish a dollar amount. So, Kelly, don't sit down, just kidding.
You made another question.
I was trying. I was
Kelly,
trying.
come sit up here with us. Why don't you do that? It would probably be wise, actually. Why don't we invite her up?
That's okay.
It's like, heck no.
Troy's on.
I offered earlier.
There's two numbers to decide. What's the millage we want to renew or replace the expired one with, and how long do we want to do it? Two. So from what I'm getting, it sounds like we're all honing in on that 3.6 mils to replace that. Does everyone agree with that?
You can't vote.
No, I'm just
No, we're
talking.
not voting, we're just a discussion.
I'm not, we're just, I think there's some other numbers that are out there.
So the maximum that we can request the voters to vote on is 5.6368 mils. That will bring in, based on today's taxable values, about $2.3 million.
Sure. But if we simply, shall we say, replace the expired one, it would be 3.6.
And
Correct.
what's the average cost per homeowner? Do we know that? We
I
do know
believe
that.
that's in
I
the
know it's in
packet. It was
yeah,
about
I just don't know it
60.
all.
But they're
ask me
currently
numbers.
assessed at that, so, or they're currently paying that, so
Okay, average taxable value at the 3.6 rate would be $251.78. If we went to the 5.63, it's $384.70.
What size house?
Well, it's probably median
Yeah,
value.
currently the average taxable value was 68,000 when this report was prepared.
So our average house is under 140?
that's,
I'm sorry,
Our average house is under 140?
that's taxable.
this is taxable
Tax rate,
value.
taxable income.
Yeah, that's right. You know,
Basically doubled it.
So if you uncapped the house, how much would it be? It can be a lot more than 140.
It would change.
Yeah.
I don't know what that
We'll
would
end
be.
up like Hazel Park, where people are paying $8,000 a year, $10,000 a year, and they're 2 blocks off 8 Mile because they built a new house there. And they got uncapped, got kicked way up.
They knew that when they bought it. That's all I have to say about
But a
that.
lot of them didn't know.
The uncapping process also occurs when one person sells to
Buyer
another,
beware.
right? So,
It's when the property's sold, yes.
yeah.
so
So what would I know there's no absolute in any of this on ensuring that we were able to maintain the same level. If we went out for 3.62, it would give us most likely a less, by the time it rolls back, it's going to give us less revenue.
Correct.
So if we wanted to ensure that we were as close as possible, what would your projection be?
I did not
Oh,
project that,
guru.
so. I did not prepare that projection.
Okay.
wait, are you suggesting we'd be less than 3.6?
No, not at all. I'm not
I
suggesting
believe
that.
she's suggesting we do less than
Less than the
5.6,
five,
but more than
Less than the
But more than
3.6.
362
Okay.
in order to even out.
Why would you mean not have a surplus?
No,
Because we've been running surpluses for the last 4 years.
no. Explain, please.
I'm sorry, am I?
No, she's gonna
To
explain it.
maintain the
Well,
same level of expenditures and revenues, how much would we need to request from the residents to maintain that 1.5 million we currently collected? So because of the inflationary and the rollback.
So you're saying 3.6 would not maintain our level of services?
It would be a little bit lower next year.
Part of the equation would be
The revenue would be,
Rollback.
millage revenue would be a little bit lower next year because of the rollback.
Yeah, but part of it, you would be gaining value on houses. So that's going to be part of the equation.
I don't know if that, how much, that's,
Well, if you're
I
gonna-
think the
if
last,
you're gonna do a projection, you
the
need all the
last
figures.
projection was about a 2% increase.
Yeah.
Well, last year, with the 3.6 in place, we had a surplus of 1.1 million.
Yeah.
I'm just curious why we would need more than 3.6 if we ran a surplus last year. Am I-
Well, how about having the projections prepared tomorrow and have them for the meeting tomorrow? get them to us as quick as possible.
I don't-
Reframe,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, the rollbacks you're referring to, could you elaborate a
So
little bit? Again, I'm the new guy.
I'll have to look at the budgets, but when we do the revenues, the total revenue included permit fees, it included grants. So that doesn't account against those particular police, fire, well, the grants may, but police, fire, DPW. The building permits are associated with building inspection fees, so those kind of offset each other. Buildings is typically runs at a loss every year. I know there's a big loss that we carry over from year to year on the financial statements. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but, so the millage would just be for general operating, police, fire, DPW. I don't think I answered your question, but,
Sorry, you still gave me useful information.
okay.
You mean other useful information?
That's right.
Okay.
Can always use more information.
Hey,
So we got two numbers to try to pick.
Well, the other one, so worst case scenario, again, we're at 7% or 8% or 9% for the remainder of this year going into 2023. What does that mean?
I'd have to get with the assessor to get you more information on that.
Okay, right, because we're at.
I can reach
it's-
out to him in the morning or
it's
before I
whatever's-
leave today.
Right, it's whatever's less, right? So we'd be at 5% for,
I'm not,
okay.
that's not my forte.
so I'm just going to say it one more time. The residents in this community, when I was out and about and talking to people for the past couple of months, overwhelmingly shared that the reason they like Clausen is because of the services, the level of services that we have. They like the people who provide the services. Probably not something they're willing to give up. Of course, they all also want to see the roads and sewers taken care of. And those are things we do need to address, but it's not something we can address under this. But not acting on this is going to be a detriment to everyone who lives here and the services they currently are receiving. And we owe it to the people who put us here, your neighbors, you owe it to yourself to go ahead and move forward on this. I can just say, we just need to do it. We've sat here and been at odds about many, many things since November 15th. And this is not something we should be at odds about because it is about the residents 100%, 100%.
I think we are working towards something. I think we're working towards keeping all the services. I think I've heard that. You know, that's not necessary to sound like we're fighting over this. I think we all came up with something. The rest of us are working towards something. Are you? Let's do it. Let's get these figures and figure out tomorrow what we're going to do.
The other thing too is that we do have to, there's a human element with the election, having this palatable in order to have it passed. So we can say that, and I'm sure it's true, right? But it still means that in an off-year election in May, that I assume it will pass, but we just have to make sure that it's something that can be swallowed.
Right, but we have to ensure that there's something that can be presented at the same time. So
That's part of what we're trying to get here, right?
we'll see. We'll see. So I guess then,
Motion to adjourn?
no?
Well,
Mr. Homeowner
we
answers
need to
is
come
still
up with
speaking.
I really think we need to come up with two numbers today, a millage and a number of years. I think we need, I mean, if we don't do this today, the clock's ticking, right?
Well, she's going to bring us all the information
Yeah.
for tomorrow, and then we'll.
Okay, let's do best case scenario. Best
We
case
can
scenario, she
well-
brings you everything that makes you happy.
And I guarantee we won't know anything
Then
more
what are
about
we gonna do?
inflation tomorrow than we do today.
I would like to stay with consent.
Things may change. It's a
Yeah.
bit- I mean, we weren't even then at that point in January,
No, we're not-
November,
I'm not trying to
right?
take a vote.
So-
Right,
Not at
but
all
we're down
trying
to
to
days
take a
now,
vote.
right?
Yeah.
But if I say what I want and you say what you want, it's close to a vote.
No, I'm not even going to say I'm going to say, I don't want to sit here and do this exact same thing tomorrow, is what I'm saying.
Well, if you have to-
I'm saying, can we please be at a place tomorrow where we can move
Yeah.
and make a decision, because we have to, because of the clock, but also because we just invested it'll be an hour and a half by the time we walk out of here, of all of our time, and I would like it to have been for something good, and I would like to not spend another hour and a half on the exact same thing tomorrow, just for the benefit of everybody.
I think the three of us have made our offers. or ask for the same question, bring these to us. I think we're doing great.
My question was, if she comes to you with the information, are you going to be ready to move? If she's unable to have the information for you tomorrow, are you going to be willing to move? And I use the word willing,
No.
not able, willing.
No, no information, no moving. We need that information.
Okay.
We just can't come here and talk about it another time without, if she gives us the information, let's make a decision.
Okay, then,
Then-
if that's the case, I'd like you to be very specific about what information you want. Because when we sitting here 24 hours from now, suddenly we just don't have the information.
I'd like to see her update that stuff you were working on. And then plus.
I'm not sure what
bring
he
your
was working on.
projections That you're supposed to, that we ask for the projections of, what do you say, nothing? 3.6 or whatever.
That was my projection,
And
yes.
then 5 something.
That was my projection.
Yeah.
It was included in the email today.
Yeah.
So I did
I can
provide
pull it up.
that.
But what happens to
can
the
move on.
evaluation on houses? Put it-
I will get that to
do a
you,
presentation.
but I did provide the projection
Send us
based on
something.
1.5.
That's from another company.
Yeah.
Oh, the PFM.
Kelly, find it on my machine, will you?
I just provided it within the email. It was not an attachment. I put number 3.
And if you provide it,
Yeah, 1 second.
yeah, if you can pull it up right now, let's do it.
Oh, yeah, for item number 3. The current revenue projection for this millage
She's saying she provided the information.
in
That's fine.
fiscal year 2022 is 1.5. If there's a zero millage sent to the residents, the city would have a shortfall of 1.5 million based on the current budget. If the city council requests residents to approve the full allowable amount of 5.6368 mils, our projected revenue would be 2.3 mil. Revenue for half of the allowable millage would amount to 1.15 mil, creating a 0.35 mil shortfall when compared to current fiscal year 2022 budget. These dollar amounts are based on current property tax values. Additional details to support are provided in the July 14th, 2021 presentation attached.
And that's outdated to me. That's 8 months old.
Well, do we have an updated one?
I asked, but we haven't gotten one.
So that projection, that's, again, a projection of,
That projection does not change. Those were the taxable values that we submitted back in July through the treasurer's office.
Or you were gonna call the treasurer tomorrow, or tonight, you said.
The assessor for future years,
Yeah.
So if she
That's part
changes.
as far as,
That's part of
as far as inflation.
So when this says February 1st, 2022, with the same information, you're going to be fine with it? Because she said it didn't change, right? And then she'll add in the projected numbers on top of it, and then we'll be good to go?
yeah, because again, your projections are based on assessments that were sent out to all the residents.
Correct,
And that doesn't change by the month, it changes by the year.
correct.
So that's why she's saying it hasn't.
And new assessments go out every February, I believe.
Document the information, send it to us, and make it new, and put your name on it. We're good.
Okay, does anyone else have anything? Kelly, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, August, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Nothing.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
But August,
Councilmember
make it
Shepherd?
clear, you need a decision drop dead by when?
February 8th.
Tomorrow.
4 o'clock.
It's tomorrow,
Which
because
is
otherwise we have to
tomorrow.
meet again.
There's always,
Or we
you
have to
always
have a
have that
special
ability to call a special meeting and do a last minute thing. I've seen it before. It's,
Sure,
but realistically, tomorrow night's meeting is when it should be done.
Yeah, yes.
Could be done. I wouldn't say should. I'm not going to tell you.
You don't want
what to do.
You don't want us driving you to the timing wall, right, where you just got a little bit of time. You'd like a little time to do your job.
That's why
Ju- Just in case the county misses an email, you never know. I just try to follow up on that stuff and get receipts, so I don't like to push deadlines like that.
And we're going to have a snowstorm.
Yeah, we're going to have a snowstorm, it's true.
Well, that's coming.
What does that mean? You're not a kid in school. It means nothing. It means you drive to work in the snow.
Yeah.
They're talking about
Not a
8
snow day?
to, they're talking 8 to 15 inches of snow.
Troy's here.
I'll get to work because I drive a plow truck. I know what some of you drive. You may not be leaving your driveway.
But Tuesday is it.
I'll drive around you.
You ain't driving around, you got a Dodge, I'll outrun you.
Madam Mayor, I did have one other
Yes.
thing. So there was, back in July, there was something that was brought up regarding AEW and their estimates from 2020 for roads, water main, combined sewer, and it was for a total of $154.5 million. Was there ever an update from AEW?
Yes, they updated it in, I believe, August 4th of 2021. That was the latest update we have, 156 million.
156, okay.
And the only thing that's going to change on that list is the roads are worse and the cost is going to go up. So until we have a,
Okay, not to
I'm not-
go down, but, you know, I hear that from certain parts of the community, right? And I hear from other ones that there's other, so that, it goes back to where's the map, right? I think, and
It's-
focus on what that is and, you know, what does that entail for what our requirements are? And are there specialized bonds that we can do just to target certain areas, a specialty bond? I think, is that the?
There's different revenue, there's
revenue
revenue
bond
bonds,
and there's
there's
a-
a state revolving fund, there is the government obligations, which we would be responsible through general fund, and we
Yeah.
would have to, that would, actually, we would not be able to, would be a special assessment, like we do
Special
trash,
assessment.
like we do trash, sanitation.
He sent us all the copy of that. So we all have it.
this thing,
From AEW?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you'll have it.
I have 2 copies. Oh, yeah, you probably have it too. Whatever. Okay, Councilmember Anderson, do you have anything else?
Well, yeah, there's, again, two things we'd like to decide, a millage and a timeframe. We've kind of, still a little up in the air in the millage number we're looking for. Maybe perhaps we can spend this time to at least discuss a timeframe. Maybe make some progress on that.
I think that's best left for a official meeting where we can vote.
Well, I agree, but before we vote, let's chat. Let's come to maybe some conclusion on that. Resolve as many issues, we had 2 issues, resolve as many as we can. I know Glenn was concerned about the length of time, and I understand that, so let's talk about that. What time frame are we comfortable with
I
here?
throw out 2 years.
I'll be honest, I think 2 years is too short.
Me too.
How many years?
Pardon me?
How many years?
I would go 10 or 7, minimum 7.
10's a standard, but if you guys are really concerned about the variables of the future, then
And again, it goes back to, we've not seen this in, 35 years, right? So that's
Right.
my concern, that, okay, we need to be able to understand what those impacts are. And we'll certainly know that within a year, right? So that if we know by year 6, oops, we've got 4 more years that we signed off on and we were in deep trouble, I get it. That's something that's standard, but at the same time, you know, it goes back to making sure that we have our process in place that knows that, okay, these are the dates that we need to hit to get all our information, to get it out to the public, to sell for an upcoming election, so everyone knows and not guessing when they go to the ballot box that, okay, what am I doing this for other than maintaining city services, right? I'm like, obviously, everybody wants to do that. That's the main goal, right? I get it. But what does that mean, right? Not having it or having it. It's not necessarily that's an ultimatum and not necessarily a vote.
Well, we could also ask for it in perpetuity, because clearly it's needed. These revenues are needed to maintain status quo, so.
do we all agree on that?
Yeah, but in perpetuity, that's.
Not perpetuity, let's
never
just talk,
fly.
let's talk to
An
numbers.
option, I'm just saying.
Sure,
there are-
but-
it's a-
but there's
We're
also-
asked to pick a number between 0 and 5.3. 3.6 is where we are today.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we all comfortable with something approximating 3.6? Are we looking to go higher or lower? I just want to get your thoughts, your feelings. It's all open discussion.
Well, again, I'd like to see some of that presented. What are our options? Where does that, you can move the needle one way or another. There's an optimal range that people will say, I agree with this and move forward with it.
Are you-
Right? If you're saying that we're going to do the max in 10 years, I don't think that'll ever fly, especially with the time frame that we've got, right? So what is it, and say, do a mea culpa to the residents, say, look, we need to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row before we come back to you, but right now, this is what we have to be faced with. And if we do that for 10 years, I can't speak to everybody, but I would say, let's get it right as opposed to just, getting it out there as quickly as possible.
I think our November 3rd meeting was indicative of the value that our residents have on services and on performing services in-house. So I think we're not going to have a hard time reselling this because, again, it is a new millage in that the other one expired, and we have to say that it's new. It's not new in terms of budgeting and in terms of what people are used to, and that's a good thing. I know you don't often expect to not have a bills to go away, right? There are certain things that are just standard, and I think the costs associated with our homes are, you never get a win on that unless you get to the point where you don't have that monthly payment anymore, but you're always still going to have taxes and other things to pay for, your insurance and all of that. So I don't think we're going to have a hard time selling it to the community. I just want to ensure that we have enough to do what we've been doing, and I would hate to go out with 3.68 and then have it be rolled back to a point where we're still in the bind as far as services go.
Let me, if you could, Kelly, please humor me. I'm the new guy, so I get a few bonus things.
That's
Humor me.
okay.
The rollbacks we're concerned about for next year, what exists, what will the rollbacks be this year this upcoming year relative to this last year? The rollbacks you're referring to, what are they?
It was, let's see.
3.6, I'm assuming we maintain our service. but
I
you're
don't,
saying in
I don't
light of
have the
rollbacks-
information of what it was in 2020 with me. I think it was 3.7 something. I don't have it in front of me, though.
Yeah, 3 points, I mean, yeah, it's 3.6892.
Is Stacy still in the audience? Stacy may have that information.
You want the actual formula they use to give an idea of how it is to estimate?
No formulas, thank you very much.
I'd like that.
It's supposed to be a friendly
I guess
meeting.
It's mostly words.
Oh, okay. I like words.
It's the previous year's taxable value minus losses times a inflationary multiplier
Multiplier.
that can be no greater than 1.05, but is calculated as an average of monthly inflation provided by the U.S. government to figure out the multiplier, divided by the following year's taxable value minus any additions.
Hey, Bruce, what's the number?
Well, I guess, okay.
So you
So you're
don't
talking
know,
about
you
an
don't know
engineer.
the new
Yes.
taxable value until that information's available. You know what the previous years is, so you can figure out part of the formula, but that's one of the problems with the
Okay.
Headley rollback.
Thank you. Then I know thank you. I now know what you're speaking of. You're speaking of the fact that your assessment can only go at a rate approximately inflation. It's part of the Headley protection that people's assessments don't go
What
through
is
the
that?
roof. That's probably
That's what it was the prior year?
So thank you, yes.
So
Now,
the prior,
with
the
that-
prior year, it was 3.7707.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacy.
And that could change based on inflation.
Yes.
But the rollback, again, I don't think we're looking at lower inflation. We're probably looking at higher, which means that rollback will not be so substantial, is what I'm saying. So,
That goes back to what I was saying, that if we have to look back for reference, 1982, late 70s, early 80s is the only time frame we've got.
for inflation, but Headley was what, 78?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so,
In perpetuity.
yeah, well, that was back in the days of very high
Well,
inflation.
they've changed it too.
People's assessments going through the roof. My dad, who's a CPA, versed me very well in the whole system. Especially the system, you have two people living in the same house. One person sells, they buys it, their assessment goes up, so you've got two people living in the same value of house, paying a much different tax rate.
Yep.
Headley, and the people said, if you pass Headley, you're gonna get that.
Yep.
Two neighbors, same house, same value, different tax rates. So what you're saying is, you're concerned that the rollback for next year will actually hurt our revenue stream.
Correct. If we keep it at the rate of 3.6, the current rate.
And you're going to show us a projection tomorrow, how much it is?
I will get with the assessor. If he can get me information tomorrow, I will forward it right on to you.
I guess, yeah, send that to us. I guess right now, 3.6 has gotten us surpluses each year. If the worst comes to pass, we'll just start losing our surplus. So I think so, sounds like, Mayor, you're concerned that 3.6 will not be enough. Is that what I'm hearing?
We know it won't be constant, is my concern, which makes it not constant.
And I,
You
if it's
guys look like you're all
silence.
spent.
No, I just say that it goes back to the timeframe that we're looking for, right? It's not, if things were not where they are as of today, and we knew that 5 years from now would have been the same timeframe since '09 to 2020, right? Then we wouldn't necessarily be in the conversation of length of time. I think that would be easy to say, right? But we were in a state of flux. How are we going to react to it? What trouble are we going to get in, one way or another? And do we have an opportunity to take a look at it again? That's my concern over the length of time, mostly. I mean, how we come to the number, I think there's some detail that we'll be able to get, but our ability to react and have something that the voters can accept and understand that, okay, this is the situation that we're in now, and don't necessarily want to have it be as, perceived as an ultimatum.
No ultimatums here. Anyone else? With that, I will entertain a motion to exit this meeting if you all agree to come back tomorrow and resolve this issue. Anybody? Everybody in for that?
Motion to adjourn?
Then we're not adjourning until you agree.
Motion.
That's an
one
ultimatum.
decision. Okay, be that way.
Not getting out of here until you.
On tape.
We have a motion and a second.
What else do you need then?
Let's take a vote.
You're in charge of
Okay.
taking the vote.
I'm waiting for you to call. That's fine.
You didn't-
Councilmember Anderson,
Nobody listens to me here.
Mayor
This is a
Milan,
vote, this is a vote to adjourn.
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
didn't hear. Sorry, everyone was talking. Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
We're
Thank you,
adjourned.
everyone. We will see you back here
Yes, I
know,
tomorrow.
too.
Have a wonderful evening.